trying to explain to people who have lived in such a deep delusion, like a full submerge into delusion. I'm not accustomed to having to do that. And the thing is like, I think anybody who has true spiritual growth, emotional and mental growth, I don't see how they could possibly stay stuck in that level of delusion for so long. I do understand like the whole concept behind grooming and Stockholm syndrome, and to some degree that's what trauma does. And then I also understand because of the Freemason component here and like the secret society thing, like that's a whole part of the methodology that goes into it, the programming and the psyche breaking, and like the whole thing is just like a shit show. Shit show. I don't know what the intention is here. Like, I don't know what any of you are trying to prove. I don't know what the goal was here because it was never in alignment with my energy. So, like, I had no part in any of this. The overall ideology here or whatever, like light versus dark, or it's like it's just such a very immature energy, but not just immature, just lacking any kind of logic or substance or just like really anything. It's like how do I get these people to understand that I don't give a fuck. Putting yourself in a one-sided competition or whatever this fucking weirdo game is, like whatever you guys get down in, like whatever your intention was, whatever, like none of it ever had anything to do with me, and it still doesn't have anything to do with me. It still doesn't. Mainly because you don't even know me. First off, none of you know me. Even if you're stalking someone, even if you dig into like every crevice of their life, if you infiltrate people that may have known them at one point, you still don't know someone. You still don't know someone. People cannot at least approach the self-awareness to have a base understanding, like a very base understanding of their own projection. So projection is always bad in terms of like interacting with other people, because you're projecting from your ego, you're projecting from a subconscious wound, your experience onto other people. Your experience. So whatever your traumas are, whatever your cultural beliefs are, your whole life experience has led you to this present moment in who you are, okay? But when you do not have an enlightened, awakened understanding of yourself completely, you're projecting onto other people that wound itself while in your mind believing whatever delusion you've convinced yourself of. This is like the delusions of grandeur of a narcissist. And this is what happens also too when people get involved in voodoo and witchcraft, like fully embody the whole narcissistic lifestyle because you want to stay a perpetual victim. It's comfortable. You don't mind other people lying to you because you lie to yourself and you know you're lying to yourself, but you're more comfortable there than venturing outside of that. These are the people who think that the afflictions and the things that happen to them, they can't escape. My observation, because, I do take a very high level observation of like energy situations happening everywhere. And this is something too, especially in the last few years, with the industry or with music, with movies and things like that. And I don't watch TV really, and I don't keep up with influencer or celebrity culture really at all. And I've stopped listening to a lot of music, really a lot. I'm very selective about the music that I will listen to now. And it's because like the delusion of grandeur is translating into this music. And because the vision for people is not coming from real creativity, and this isn't just with like artificial intelligence, it's all so ego driven. But there's just this large desire to not be introspective, to not ever pause long enough to learn a lesson that you actually extract true wisdom from, that can help kind of propel you forward in a more organic sense of completion, sense of success, sense of abundance and authenticity and creativity, all of the general good characteristics that give us like the good feelings. When you kind of lose that and you start this like spiritual bypassing, and you lose sight of like the overall intention of why you started doing what you were doing, like you essentially lose the vision for yourself. And then if you don't change the environment because you've built everything upon this ego or these beliefs, and now it's just too triggering to even confront yourself, then you can just expect more of the same. You just expect more of the same. But what there's a real diminishing of, and I can speak to this from an individual perspective, but also on a larger perspective, on a more macro understanding of the people in general who end up being diminished, the intentions, the visions, the creativity, all of that ends up getting diminished. So then there's less opportunity to even learn or be inspired from others, which makes it then even more difficult for the people who aren't full-blown narcissists yet. They just lack some self-awareness, or they went down the wrong path. And so there's so many things, there's so many contributing factors to this, but a couple of examples of this. And I've been paying a little bit of attention lately, especially, and I don't know how much of this artificially generated algorithm on this spoof page that I'm stuck in, this like premeditated weirdo bullshit, it's so fucking stupid. I don't know how much of it is like this like weird coercive kind of thing. It's so weird. It's so weird. In an attempt, it's like a desperate attempt to program somebody, when it's just like, get a fucking life. Like, go program yourself. Like, why are you so like outside of yourself and then triggered by that? You know what I'm saying? So I was watching this video, and this dude, it sounded like he was having some introspection about a situation. He didn't give a whole lot of a backstory about the situation. It seemed like he's like a farmer dude or whatever. He mentioned spiritual stalking in the title. And then he was talking about, well, I wanted to help this person, and it sounded like there was a boundary laid down, and then this person persisted a little bit past the boundaries, and he himself called it spiritual stalking. So, and it was like he was kind of, you could hear he was going in and out of introspection to like projection, and ego to like more intuitive type understanding of himself. So I gotta give him credit. This is nothing against him at all. This is just one great example of this. Whenever you are crossing someone's boundaries for any reason, you are in the wrong. Someone shouldn't have to tell you no, or I'm not interested, or no thank you more than once. And it sounded like this person had a belief, and he did say something about like, grew up in Jehovah's Witness and all of that, and we spread love and joy and all and that, and I totally understand this. But if somebody has not welcomed that, if they haven't invited you in to give them that understanding, and then because they haven't invited you in, they haven't welcomed you in, they haven't embraced you, you project onto them that they are under demonic control, that they don't walk with the Holy Spirit, that you know that this could call dark energies in. Okay, maybe, or maybe not. But the thing is it doesn't matter. If something is not affecting you directly, if something is not having any kind of effect on your life, this person isn't vandalizing your property, this person isn't coming onto your land and killing your cattle, this person isn't having, trap house crackheads coming in and out that's like affecting, your neighborhood and all of that, I assume, because he didn't mention this, but if none of that is happening, and whatever your perception of this person is, okay, because remember, this is just this person's perception of this other person. If they haven't made that claim, though, like if they don't hold themselves as let's say, a Jewish person, and you assign the Jehovah's Witness or Christian doctrine to yourself, then that's different, because this person has given you that information. That person has given you that understanding. But if this person hasn't given you that, and you have just assigned something based on your perception, then that is projection. And that is a limited perspective, because it's one-sided. Let's put this in terms of like a new age. I've had people assign that to me as well. I'm not a new age person, although the labels really don't matter to me much, but I hold myself as a Christian. So let's say somebody has assigned to me, and I've definitely had this happen. I've had people assign all sorts of things to me. I don't give a shit because it doesn't matter to me, but that's their understanding, and it's based on a limited perspective. But you can see where if somebody was projecting onto me because of whatever their belief is about new age people, and I don't even know where people come up with this shit. I really don't. I most of the time, because if they've already stepped over the boundary of even making a projection at me, then they have already determined that they're not on my frequency. They don't seek understanding. They're not capable yet. And this is just based off their own journey of meeting me where I'm at. They don't have a desire to actually know me because they've already assigned something to me. So that, for me, the lesson, the takeaway there for me is to not try to explain myself to this person, because this person has already made a determination. So any effort to explain myself to this person would be futile and would also drain my energy. Intention and the projection is the division. It is the brick wall. And if you try to cross that before you've had the self-awareness to recognize your own projections, your own wounds, your own trauma, your own misunderstanding, then there's no sense, and it's going to be draining. I think you mentioned something also too about like the demons really are protecting this person or whatever. If your perception is that you are being drained because of a demonic influence, and your consideration is that it's protecting this person, well, I would say a couple things about this. If you're the one that is perceiving demons, then that also is your perception. That's your projection, meaning you're the source of that, because you're the one speaking it out of your mouth. Let's say this person does have a demonic influence around them. If they're protecting this person, let's just say that were even to be true. Let's say that were even happening. There would be some effect to you. Demonic influences are just naturally sort of hedonistic, nihilistic in the fact that they don't give much consideration besides whatever they're determined to eat up. Whatever they're there to like gather or harvest, let's say. So it could be energy, but most of the time there's some destructive nature to them. But even more importantly, and see, a lot of people don't want to talk about this. They want to just glaze past this part. They have to be controlled and directed. That's the whole purpose of ritualistic behaviors. Even people who are practicing Satanists, Luciferians, Freemasons, witches or warlocks, sorcerers, they have a ritual around all of these things because it's how they invoke or possess. But and this is their perception, and I've gained this understanding through humility and respect. This isn't shit I just watched on YouTube. This is me reaching out to people because I want to have a better understanding of what's happening in my environment. I want to have a better understanding of the people who are actually trying to bring harm to me, so that I know how to approach it. Not so that I know how to control anybody else, but that so I can navigate that. So that I can navigate that terrain myself. But a lot of that, from my understanding, because I am a Christian and because I'm in a covenant with God, I get directly from source. But I also understand, because of my journey, because of my ancestry, because of my level of enlightenment, that if I do have demonic influence, or there is some control from like underworld principalities or legions, because it's a part of my ancestry, it's because of my enlightenment and because of their ability to put a stop to people who continuously are affecting my path. They cannot inhabit me. They cannot possess me or control me, though, because I'm in a covenant with God. And if my mission is to be in the dark valley, which any Christian, that is our mission. But when you're in a covenant with God, you're not using your free will to teach people. You're using your being, your testimony. And a part of my testimony, part of my journey, and the way that God specifically uses me, is to go into dark valleys, same as Jesus, and bring the light there for whatever it needs to be. But bringing the light doesn't mean that I'm spitting scripture at people, that I'm projecting onto people. It means that I'm either sharing my testimony or I'm just being in my energy, right? But if the darker, lower vibrational energies that are in there are trying to inhibit my path and God's mission for my life, my destiny, trying to put roadblocks continuously in front of me, that doesn't mean that that person is working or is controlling demonic influence. A part of, I believe, and what I have been shown through prayer and meditation and better understanding, because I am aware too that this is a part of my favor in the spirit realm. It is my belief that a part of the reason that a lot of like what you would consider like underworld or darker energies or deities and things like that, a part of the reason that I have the favor for that is because of how I treat people when they're here. It matters how you treat people. It matters how you show up for people. It matters. And people just don't want to understand this. That this is a part of how favor with God, with your ancestors, it really is about your intentions and your pure intentions. But see, your intentions when it comes to like crossing other people's boundaries, when it's through force or manipulation, it doesn't matter what you want, what you believe. You could have the best intentions. And I think a lot of the times, especially with this gentleman, it seemed like he didn't have bad intentions. But your intentions don't matter to another person. The path to hell was paved with good intentions. That's what this means. When you're setting an intention for yourself, though, those intentions matter. When you make a decision like, this is how I'm going to show up for other people, those decisions matter. And God sees everything. So just giving the example of my daughter's father, and I'm not saying I was a perfect person to him. You know, I was in my early 20s, and I was very disappointed by him. You know, our daughter was in the hospital. She had a lot of medical issues. I ended up having to move briefly to Charleston, South Carolina, and then I stayed with my sister and her husband and her kids for a little bit. and being into normal development and all of that, he wanted me to come back home to Cleveland. And I knew my sister was going to be very upset with me because she enjoyed having me there and all of that. And so I was faced with this, having to make a choice of whether I was going to stay there or whether I was going to come back to Cleveland. And I prayed a lot about this. And so, long story short, I ended up deciding to come back. Well, of course, my sister was very upset with me, and that created some tension and friction for us for a while. And I tried to apologize and have explained to her why I made the choices that I made, but she was upset about it. And again, that was at her time in her life. But when I came back, everything was great for a while. Actually, the first couple months, everything was truly really amazing. My daughter took right to her dad. I was really afraid that she wasn't going to know who he was, or she was going to be afraid of him, because we had been gone for a few months. But she was obsessed with him right away. And that was great. I was so excited about that. Well, it wasn't too much longer before I started to see that things were definitely off with him. And then not too much longer after that, discovered that he had a full-blown drug addiction. And at first I thought maybe it was just pills or nose candy. Like, I thought it was like that until I found a needle. And it wasn't his. Like, the lies started. He was just being so manipulative, and he like could only conceal it for so long. And then eventually I walked into the house one day and went up into our bedroom, and he was slumped over on the bed. He had pissed his pants, and he had a needle hanging out of his arm. And I was horrified. I had never seen anything like that before in my life. Like, I that memory will stay with me forever. And I ran out of the house screaming. I was so angry with the people that were in his house. I was yelling at his mother because I didn't want him to die. And I knew, though, also, again, I was faced with a choice, because I have an infant. I have a toddler. And here I just gave up living in sunny Myrtle Beach with my sister and her family to come back here to this, because I wanted to give you the opportunity to be a father, because I didn't want to live with the guilt of you not getting to, have a family or have this experience of being in your daughter's life every day and all of that. I didn't want to take that experience away from him, or take it mainly away from my daughter, because I didn't get to grow up with a dad. So that just was the right thing at the time to do. But I still had to make the choice. And so I knew I couldn't stay living with him because it wasn't safe for her. I wasn't going to live with a drug addict. And so then I ended up getting my own place. But I still regularly had to be met with sort of the fallout of having a child with an addict. And there was a whole bunch of things that came around that. But my intention never changed, in that I still wanted my daughter to have an experience of knowing her father. And so I put firm boundaries down with him, and I was like, okay, this is the rules. You can come over to my house. Don't ever show up here high. Don't ever bring drugs into my house, and we'll be okay. And so, a couple times a week he would stop by, and he knew better. He wouldn't come over high or anything like that. And I would make him food, and we would talk. Like, we weren't in a relationship or anything like that. But there was no point in me trying to convince him not to use drugs. That was his choice. There was nothing I could do about that. It doesn't mean it wasn't heartbreaking to me. But it was still his choice. And I knew that, like, if there was any chance for him actually recovering, if I could have any influence over him, it wasn't in calling him a junkie. It wasn't in constantly ridiculing him, constantly questioning him, blowing him up in text messages. It wasn't going to go that way. Like, if that would have worked, we wouldn't have people dying of drugs hundreds of times a day all over our world. That doesn't work. Sometimes just showing love and reminding people that they're human and creating a space where they're not judged not only saves your energy, but it also helps reflect back to them the good parts that remain of them. So essentially what I did is I put a boundary down with his demons. I spoke to his spirit, and I reminded him that he's a father and he has an opportunity to be a father. And the loving energy and the time he spent with my daughter, because he really did adore my daughter, helped him get to a period of recovery where he was truly recovered. He got his own apartment. It wasn't him and his brother lived together in this like 2-bedroom. It wasn't this, super great apartment. He worked at Wendy's, so he wasn't making great money or anything like that. He was super embarrassed about it. But I never criticized him for those things. Like when he got a job at Wendy's, I was like, yes. And if he needed a ride, like I would go out of my way to give him a ride to work just to make sure, I never criticized him about those things. And he continued to make tiny steps forward. But most importantly, he got to a place where he was able to develop a deep bond with my daughter. And my daughter was able to have that experience. Even if she doesn't have a whole lot of memories around it, there's pictures and there's experiences. And so ultimately, I didn't know that at the time when I was leaving Myrtle Beach. I would have had no way to know the bigger picture of all of that. But there was a lot of growth for me personally in owning that experience and being responsible for myself and being responsible for the choice to have a child with someone, that I wasn't married to, that was young and had trauma and, all of that. I can't go back and change any of those choices, nor would I want to. And so it was also a conscious choice to work on forgiving him after he died. But when he did die, I knew that for this person, I was a source of love and understanding. Nothing else I could have done would have helped him heal his trauma because he had to do that on his own. That was a choice he had to make. And even though he might have had good intentions to want to, his intention really didn't matter if he wasn't willing to look at himself. If he wasn't willing to make the choice. And there's a lot of power in choice. But trying to force another person's choice is only going to continue to set you up in the same cycle. It's only going to continue to set you up because you're still acting from dependency on the outside world. Your choices cannot be dependent on how you handle other people, how you show up in the world. Even if you don't assign to a Jehovah's Witness anymore, or even if this person, let's say they are a New Ager, or I think he mentioned like Pleiadians or aliens or something like that. Like, just because somebody studies aliens or is interested in aliens, like that has nothing to do with somebody. Like, it's very narrow-minded. That's all I'm going to say about that. But you have to understand where you're selling yourself short, where you're potentially missing lessons and inhibiting your own spiritual growth and your own covenant. But when you force that continuously and you're not recognizing a projection, that is draining of your energy. If you've ever loved an addict, or you've been in a trauma bond, or you've had any dependency on anything on the outside world, you get drained. Because the control is coming from outside of you and pulling that energy out of you. And so I would say specifically to this person to observe that potentially, if you want to call it demonic influence, you can, but remember, that's the assignment you gave it. But this is the biggest part of this whole thing in this specific incident. When God aligns you to situations like that, any timeline you are on, any person you interact with, whatever situation you are in any given moment, you are there because God has put you there. For you and your covenant, your spirit, individually and personally. And so if this whole situation for this person in particular caused him to pause and take account of himself, which it sounds like it did, and good for him. We need more men, more God-fearing men that are willing to do this. It sounds like he's well on the way. I'm not saying he's not making some progress here, but if whomever that person is putting down a boundary with you had you go look up projection or spiritual stalking, understanding boundaries, like if it had you check yourself in any way, I would say that the Holy Spirit already is using that person.